Visible. Good.
Yes, it is visible.
Yes, sir. It is
Okay,
visible.
okay, thank you. Okay, okay. I'm sorry to all the participants. There's some internet issue, I think, so because of which I am getting muted every time I try to present. Okay, yeah, let's come to the topic we're discussing on. So I said that we were today to discuss on some of the advances in remote sensing that we basically are having presently. Well, the very requirement of remote sensing originated from certain facts. Here, if you see, we have a typical vulnerability of the ecosystems as a response to climate change. Well, climate change was not a big topic a few decades back, but that's the present scenario. It's the most important aspect of all our living today. Well, if you see here, what we show here is where the vulnerability of the ecosystem as a response to various climate change. Right. So if you have this, the scale from green, which goes from 0, the index is from 0 to 1 to as high as 1. And if you see most of the regions around the world, they are in the high, very high vulnerability index region. Well, if you see, this is a projection of the various population of the earth, and important to see is how the population in terms of human beings has resulted in the extinction of other species. Right? So if you see both the comparison, you see the plots are almost very much matching, and they are almost the exponential, approaching an exponential scale. So if you say this is the growth of population of human beings around the world, and this is the projected 2048, which is 9 billion. And then if you see on the right hand side, right from 1500 to 2014, the statistics has been taken, and this is the extinction percentage in various types of mammals, animals, and other species. Well, so this is a condition which sets in a lot of alarm, right? Now, this is what I was going to tell. So if you see, that means the extinction of species can be largely attributed to anthropogenic. That's what we see here. And this is happening on a global scale. So it becomes very important that a global scale monitoring of the activities, global scale monitoring of resources has to be undertaken. That's where the definition of the various climate variables comes in. Because how do we know that what are the various climate variables that are basically marking or pointing towards climate change? Because the climate change is the word what you saw in the earlier thing. So here we are listed about 50 essential climate variables, both in all the spheres of the earth, right from the atmosphere, ocean, and terrestrial. So most of this are, many of them are measured and many of them are derived. Well, this is just for information, but what essentially this means is the observation of the systems, processes, and the earth is very, very essential. That leads us to the topic of earth observation, right? So whatever we need to do observe on the earth, it should be on a very large capacity with a good resolution, so that we can discriminate the finer changes that are happening and attribute it to a particular regional feature. Then such an observation should be consistent as well as they should be continuous, right? And not only that, since we are dealing with product which has direct implications on our life and living, they should be very accurate. The measurement should be accurate. But what better tool than remote sensing for all these applications? So that's where the utilization of remote sensing comes in. Am I audible to everyone, please?
Clearly audible, sir. No problem.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, unable to view each other, so that helps. Okay, thank you. Well, this is imagery, if you see, from 1966 up to 1966, and as on 2016, what it represents the number is the countries which have satellites. 1966, those countries which had their own satellites, this the orange ones, and the shaded ones are those which had the ability to launch their own satellites. By when you come up to 2016, yes, what you see is, you see the number of patches that have grown in, the number of countries that have satellites on the in the orbit and also have their launching capabilities. So that's what is shown in 2016. It is almost spread except the small portion of this African region. Everywhere you see the countries are using a lot of satellites. On the right, I have a list of various satellites that are or launched totally operating as on 31st of this year, 31st March of this year. Well, you have a list of here, topping above that is the USA, followed by Russia, China, and all others at 807 satellite. Some of the satellites are low Earth orbiting satellites, some are middle Earth orbiting, some are on an elliptical orbit, and some are in geostationary orbit. I hope everyone would have be knowing what all of this means. And out of this, if you take only the satellites operated by US itself, they have about 30 which are operated for civil applications, 935 for commercial, and the government application takes about 170. And important, if you see this figure, they have about 192 satellites which are being used for strategic purposes. I'll come to it why we are highlighting this particular military applications. Well, so this is the background what we have with response to the utility of satellites for Earth observations. So that's when we talk about remote sensing of Earth or remote sensing in Earth observations, basically three important segments come into our mind: remote sensing of the ocean, of the atmosphere, and the terrestrial region. So when you talk about remote sensing of the oceans, so we have the oceans can be broadly categorized into the shallow water oceans, that's the coastal areas, and the deep water oceans. And the phenomena of features, processes that are basically responsible for characterizing the ocean are its biological constituents, physical constituents, and chemical properties. Similarly, if you have to look at the atmosphere, which basically now we are familiar with, we say that a lot of pollution is taking place, a lot of aerosols are getting released to the atmosphere. So if you look into those aspects, the atmosphere basically on the presence of various gases or density can be broadly divided into three factors. They are the lower atmosphere, the middle atmosphere, and the upper atmosphere. And the features or processes that remote sensing techniques can be used to detect are the dynamics, as well as this dynamics also covers the thermodynamics, the chemistry, that means the constituents, and the physical properties of the atmosphere. When you come to the terrestrial processes, now when you say terrestrial, it includes all features present on the Earth. So that's land, vegetation, desert areas, cryosphere, that's basically the area covered with snow and ice. And in this particular region of the terrestrial segment, the remote sensing helps us in identifying distribution of various of these features, their budgeting, basically to say how much loss or how much gain has taken place, and their variability over the years. Now, excluding the standard definition of remote sensing, which you would have come across there are other segments or applications of remote sensing. For example, underwater remote sensing. Then we have the planetary remote sensing or planetary communications. So these are some of the other applications of remote sensing. The important to note is that underwater remote sensing largely depends on acoustic signals, not electromagnetic signals. In all the other cases, we are dependent on electromagnetic spectrum, whereas underwater remote sensing, it's more mainly acoustic because the electromagnetic radiation cannot penetrate into the water. Well, with that background, I would like to present a few examples. The simplest example of a remote sensing sensor, if you see, is our eye, right? And it operates in the visible spectrum. Cannot see anything in the visible, except on the visible. If you come to another creature in nature, you see a snake. It's an amazing IR remote sensing creature, I can say. A snake can detect change in temperature of the range of 0.001, that is 1,000th of a degree centigrade change. It can be detected by a snake. So there is, of course, this varies from species to species, and you see, the snakes, particularly the animal beings, are amazing remote sensing if you can classify them in that category. But the thing is, they are all passive sensors. We know that remote sensing sensors can be categorized into two. One are passive sensors, the second is active sensors. So passive sensors are those sensors which do not have their source. Any remote sensing technique consists of three segments, that is the source, and the carrier wave, that is the probe, and the target, as well as whatever detects it, or the sensor. So together they are considered as these three factors. So out of this, the passive sensors are those sensors which are dependent on different sources. They do not carry their own source. So that's what happens in case of our visible, that is the eye, and in case of the IR, that is detected by the snake. They do not have any signal with them. They depend on the signal that is being radiated or reflected from other objects. Now, if you come to active sensors, it is like this. So if you take these bats, they are all bats. So they use ultrasonic waves. So they radiate ultrasonic radiation, which then bounces back on some object out of which they can know out of the speed, the time it takes to come, the signal to return back. The bats basically get an idea of the distance from the source, the distance from the target, and the speed as well. So important to see is this is basically again going into the criteria of sound waves. If you take in natural phenomena, if you take what are active sensors, if you take, say, for example, in the night time, we take a torch and go around. So we carry the source with us, right? So in a way, our eyes or we that time can be characterized as active sensors because we are carrying our own source. So this is a very crude definition of the distinguishing factors between passive and active sensors. Yeah, before proceeding further, it's important that we know a little bit of the various factors, the various basics of remote sensing, which everyone may be aware of this, but I will just, for the sake of completion, I will cover this. Well, we have the remote sensing is totally dependent on the electromagnetic reflection that takes place from the target surface. Now, the surfaces which have a smooth mirror-like reflection are known as specular reflection. They undergo almost very large or almost 90% above reflection, and the surfaces which do not undergo mirror-like reflection are characterized as rough surfaces or diffuse surfaces or Lambertian reflectors. The difference between specular reflectors and Lambertian reflectors is this: specular reflectors, the angle between incident radiation and the reflected radiation is same. We know about this, that's a perfect reflection. Whereas what happens in case of a non-specular reflector or a Lambertian reflector is the incident radiation gets distributed or gets reflected in all possible directions. That's basically what we call into scattering. Of course, the wavelength is a very important factor here. So these two types of factors basically decide what is the characteristics of a particular species or a target that we are trying to detect going to be. So based on the smoothness or roughness of surfaces, which is also dependent on the wavelength, we have a few considerations to be done. So based on this, there's a thumb rule by which we can decide whether a surface is going to be a smooth or a specular reflector or a diffuse reflector based on the constituent wavelength we are using. So usually it's lambda by 8. If this if the surface height variations are less than lambda by 8, then the surface is considered to be smooth for that particular wavelength. If they are higher than that, then the surface is considered to be rough for that particular wavelength. From this originates the concept of various ratio quantities, which are very important in quantifying the amount of reflection or refraction or scattering that is obtained, which gives us an idea of the nature of target. So that's where we come to the definition of the ratio quantities. So there are 4 ratio quantities that needs to be known. One is which is the ratio of the incident emittance or the radiant emittance of the source to that of a black body. So that basically means if we have a black body, perfect black body, the amount of radiance that would come from a black body, with respect to that, how a natural body behaves. Then we have reflectors. Okay, when we have energy matter interaction, that's the fundamental law of motion. Then that phenomena, reflection, absorption, transmission. The amount of reflection, absorption or transmission can take place, which is basically a property of the interaction of an object with the radiation, wavelength of the radiation. We have these 3 particular ratio quantified. Let's come to the most important factor of of remote sensing, which is based on the electromagnetic radiation. So we have this entire spectrum. If you see, it's almost the entire spectrum of the electromagnetic radiation which we receive from the sun. But for Earth observations, only a very selective spectrums can be used. In general, they are the visible band, the infrared band, and the microwave band. We'll sometimes use the UV for the atmospheric as well, but these are the three common or widely used spectral bands for remote sensing of the Earth's surface. So if you see the visible region which is enhanced here, so of course wave has its characteristics which are basically the wavelength and amplitude. So what is listed here is the range of the wavelengths of the visible spectrum. So if you come to the right, so of course we know that the visible region, and these are the 7 colors in which our eyes can see the wavelengths, and a constituent or a mix-up of the fundamental RGB gives rise to various colors. When come to the IR part of the visible spectrum, now some of the objects on the surface are sensitive to the IR or infrared. The infrared can be categorized into 2 parts: near infrared or far infrared. Coming to the microwaves, we have a categorization microwave. So if you see the microwaves, divided into this categories: P, L, S, C, X, K, U, K. Now this is a very widely used remote sensing tool, particularly involving active sensors. We'll come to it in a little while now. So this basically is the spectral range with which all our remote sensing is affected. Applications of remote sensing. So if you see, basically satellites are used not only for Earth observations, they are also used for intelligence gathering, reconnaissance, and spy satellites. Okay, but basically this application is to detect features on the Earth. So so many origin of the satellites actually took place from fiction. For example, we have the OMAC project and Ice Station Jupiter project, which originated as fiction, but they were converted to the actual program. And many movies were based on such fictions, which at the time got converted to actual programs in remote sensing. All of us may be knowing that the concept of the geostationary orbit was first given by Sir Arthur Clarke, who happened to be a fiction scientist. Earlier, the orbit was known as the Clarke's orbit, right? So many of the present techniques that are being implemented will come into effect, which have a very modest origin in fiction, science fictions. Okay, the purpose of telling you this is we will come to it a little while. You will really appreciate what is the contribution of fiction into advances in remote sensing. I would specifically draw your attention to this particular part of remote sensing, which is also known as the synthetic aperture radar remote sensing or radar imaging. This is an all-weather and omniscience approach for detecting things on Earth. We will do it in great detail, look at it at a greater detail later. This is one of the, of course, it has been in use for a very long time, but it has found very wide applications in the recent times. So here's a list of various Earth observation satellites. Very common ones. We know that most of us are working in the terrestrial, so the and Geo are very common. So is the Landsat series. So right now we have the Landsat 7 and 8, they're operational. Landsat 9, 10, and 11, they're coming in very soon. So all of us know that what is the significance of the Landsat series of applications. Well, so this is what when we look at the terrestrial applications. If we are to look at the applications of remote sensing in the sphere of atmospheric and ocean science, the first program that originated, and this was termed as the Defense Meteorological Satellite Program, which originated in 1960s in USA. Though the primary objective of this particular program was to provide the environmental information for planning and conducting their various activities, got a wide application in weather. So the origin of basically the origin of remote sensing applications for the atmosphere. And a lot of environmental features could be obtained from this origin. So if you see, you have a lot of things here. Atmosphere, you could have clouds, pollution levels in the atmosphere, the water bodies, you get the surface temperature, currents, a movement of ocean surface features, and as well as many land features that are also known to us. Now, instantly, if you see this satellites primarily operated in the visual and infrared spectrum. Well, here is a list of various countries and their space programs that are undergoing. So India has a very good share into this, and we'll look into some of this in a later case. Now, if you generally think of remote sensing, it involves of certain steps. The first among them happens to be the calibration of the sensors, very important. Then correction for the losses in the atmosphere and the signal, that's another very important factor of remote sensing. The registration, positional registration of imageries to tell us which particular geographical location that information belongs to. That's another important requirement. Then validation of the observation that is made by remote sensing through remote sensing, as well as finally the image processing. So this all constitute backbone of any remote sensing activity. And when you say what are their importances, all of us know, and this have been advancing. A lot of advancement is being made on this during various periods of time. It's continuously evolving. We will take a look on few of the advancements that have been made in particular segments. Well, so if I have to segregate out the advances in remote sensing, we can do it in two ways. One is the developments that have taken place in the instrument side. The others would be basically in the techniques that have been used. So instruments involves directly from the stage of launching, the types of satellites, the types of sensors, reception stations, etc. And if you see, not only we have a few of the object cameras, visible cameras, now we have a plethora of various sensors starting from like scatterometers, altimeters, radiometers, spectroradiometers, and combination of many of these. Of course, synthetic aperture radars have also come in. And then the second segment, if you look, is on the techniques that are used to process this. So the techniques may constitute of the parameter retrievals, geophysical parameter retrieval, atmospheric corrections, as we saw, the pre-processing of the data set, which is very important, processing to get useful information, visualization, and finally deriving information from the data sets that you have obtained through remote sensing. Well, various techniques are involved in this. Some of the very latest techniques are the spectrometry, Fourier transform, infrared spectroscopy, stereoscopy, the radio occultation techniques, which have gathered a lot of momentum in the recent years, then use of other analytical and machine learning techniques. So we have artificial intelligence there, support vector machines, then machine learning is there, and big data analytics. So these are the fields which are picking up right now with the vast amount of data that is available from satellites, as well as the pattern they usually try to the patterns that exist on the earth which the satellites capture. So these two segments broadly have undergone tremendous development since its very origin right from the last 70 years. I'll just quickly capture a few of the important aspects of satellite measurements and why this needs to be a lot of improvement needs to be done in these segments. So for example, if you see here, this is a very simple model of the atmosphere and the process of remote sensing. What you see here is this is the surface, this is the satellite sensor, which basically is trying to capture the signals that are originating from the surface. This is the top of the atmosphere. So what we see is that the radiation which basically originates from the surface, before reaching the sensor, it to the atmosphere, where we have lot of matter present in the form of gaseous substance, in the form of aerosols, dust particles, of direction radiation originating from the surface takes place. What happens is the sensor, instead of detecting what it has originated from the surface, is actually detecting the noise that have been introduced by this region of the atmosphere. Of course, the atmosphere is not so linear and not right. We have the variation in the heights. It's not a linear distribution. To keep it simple, We have just taken a very linear picture of the atmosphere. Can anyone confirm me if I am clear?
Yes, sir. Clear. Clear. But voice is a bit breaking. But now it is clear. Perfect, sir.
Okay, okay, okay. Please let me know when when the voice is breaking. Okay, I'll try to go slow. And also, I request all the participants also, if things are this any of these things are already known, so we can skip also, no issues. Please let me know.
Sir, participants are actually writing in the chat. In the chat, they are communicating, sir, time to time.
Okay, okay. Well, you can come because I on the screen. You can tell me if there is any input
Ah, sure, sir. I will tell you.
regarding the. Yes, yeah. Please tell me about input. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yes. So this is what we are discussing about the first and the foremost important factor about data receiving or satellite reception. That is that the signal that originates from the surface of the Earth undergoes a lot of noise that is introduced because of the presence of this atmosphere. So what happens is this. Right. So if this is the radiation that leave the surface, I will try to explain each of these terms. Only a fraction of the entire radiation passes through the atmosphere. So epsilon naught is known as the emissivity. B lambda basically gives you the radiance of the surface object, whatever is, which is at a temperature T naught. Yes, so epsilon naught is known as the emissivity or ratio quantity, which we defined just a little bit earlier. Tau naught is known as the transmittance, means how much of the radiation is actually getting allowed to pass through the atmosphere. Yes, so the remaining is all absorbed or transmitted or scattered in the atmosphere, which is actually not reaching the sensor. So what the satellite receives is this epsilon naught times tau naught. Yes, by the reduction in this original signal that has taken place. So this is, instead of getting epsilon naught b lambda of T naught, the satellite receives this factor multiplied by a tau naught. So this tau naught is because of the presence of the atmosphere, which disturbs the signal which originates from the surface. So this is an important loss, right? So now this surface, the disturbances in the surface could be in the atmosphere could be for various regions. If you look at the other aspect of this, for particularly for passive sensors which are dependent on the sunlight as a source, this is what they should get. If tau happens to be the transmittance of the atmosphere, so from this sun, that is from the source, the radiation falls on the surface, so it undergoes an interaction with this particular part of the atmosphere. So only whatever is allowed by this particular region of the atmosphere reaches the surface. Yes, so that is given, let us say the fraction of the radiation allowed is given by this transmittance tau 1, again the ratio quantity here. Again, that reflects from this surface, say, to the sensor location, but again the radiation, that is the signal that is reflected by from the surface of the Earth or the feature on the Earth, again has to pass through the atmosphere. So it again undergoes certain loss, and only that fraction, which is tau 2, that is allowed by the atmosphere to pass, reaches the sensor. Okay, this would have happened in case of a very idealistic case. But what again happens is this: we have lots of cloud, right? So even the 100% of the radiation that is emitted from the sun doesn't reach the surface. Yes, so part of the radiation directly reaches from the top of the clouds itself, which radiates, right? So now this creates another important problem. The problem is, instead of getting radiation here, now mixed with one which is reflected by cloud. Now all the important activity here for satellite involves how to retrieve back the losses, or basically correct the signal received by the sensor for this loss because of atmosphere, as well as the extra reflectance that is happening because of the clouds. So this is a very challenging problem, and since years,
Sir,
yes,
participants
yes.
request to repeat it because the voice was breaking, sir. Repeat a bit, sir.
The entire thing.
Huh, sir.
Okay, yeah. So I was telling that the important steps in satellite measurements, so apart from, of course, we have identified the feature we want to measure, and based on the feature we want to detect or the object we want to detect, the satellite sensor is designed. We all know this sensor has resolutions that are fixed on satellite grounds. Those resolution cannot be changed. So they are spatial resolution, temporal resolution, spectral resolution, and radiometric resolutions. We have control on the radiometric resolution on the ground, but once the sensor is made, it cannot be sent. But what happens is whatever sensor we design for capturing a particular information, now the information when it reaches the earth from the earth and reaches the sensor plane, it has to travel through the atmosphere. But the atmosphere is not totally transparent. It is opaque because of the presence of various type of gases in that. That's what I was trying to tell here. Yes. Is this quantity. Forget out what are the various quantities written. Yes, let's say X. So if ideally what should happen if there is a satellite which is above, somewhere from 400 kilometers to 36,000 kilometers, if it has to detect the object correctly to receive, because the radiation is passing through this, we know electromagnetic radiation can propagate through vacuum. Electromagnetic interact. Yes, that obviously changes its wavelength, gets added, different wavelengths get added to it. Various types of interaction take place, wave matter interaction takes place. So what happens is we have a loss in the signal that is emitted from the surface. So instead of this factor reaching here, we get the signal reduced by a certain factor. Right. So only that part of the signal reaches the sensor, which is allowed by the atmosphere to reach. Yes, that means certain part of the spectrum is, or the signals in terms of intensity, is absorbed by the atmosphere. So instead of the atmosphere, instead of the sensor receiving this amount, it now receives this factor multiplied by tau naught times. So it is actually decreased. The amount of signal is actually decreased. Why? Because tau naught happens to be a fraction. That's what we saw just a little bit away. They are all fractions, right? So less than 1. Tau naught is the tau naught is known as the transmittivity. So the amount of radiation that is allowed to pass through a particular object or a media is known as this transmittivity. So it's less than 1. So anything multiplied less than 1 multiplied with this factor will only decrease the overall factor. So it's important. Now this is what we are receiving. How much loss has taken place, so that if we divide this entire by tau naught, then we get the actual radiation that has left the source, the object, not the source, sorry. Right. So then our observations will be correct, because at that height, the signal that you are receiving will get from a very large area. Right. So this is a very clear-cut picture of the atmosphere. So this is very simple, right? But this would have been easy if the radiation interacts only the atmosphere. Not only that, what happens is we have a lot of other things present in the atmosphere, right? So for example, if we take the sun, so I was discussing here a case of only passive sensor. Here I have not shown the source, right? This loss anyway is taking. But if you consider the source, which is the sun for all passive sensors, so the sun's radiation has to first reach here, get reflected, bounced from the object here, and reach the sensor. Now the sensor will detect whatever radiation is reflected from here, right? So this is X is units that is emitted by the sun. Yes, tau 1 times X only reaches surface, right? Tau 1 times X. Is this clear?
Clear, sir. It is clear.
So at the surface, okay, tau 1 times. Is the writing visible?
Writing is visible, sir.
Okay, that's what reaches the surface. So it's not X. So already the radiation is reduced. Now from here the reflection takes place, but again signal has to pass through the entire atmosphere. Now there again only tau 2 part of the signal will reach. So what the sensor receives is now tau 2 times tau 1 of X. Now we must remember that both these are fractions. Both tau 1 and tau 2 are fractions. So the energy that reaches, the intensity that reaches the sensor is decreased significantly. Yes, but this is not the only thing. Even because of this also we can know tau 1, tau 2, no, we know, right, that okay, this is the factor we have to correct, so it is very simple. But what happens is we also have a presence of cloud, and the top of the cloud is a very good reflector. Albedo is very high. Yeah, amount of reflection that can take place from the surface of the top surface of the cloud is very high. So instead of tau 1 and tau 2 there, we have additional tau 1, tau 2 for this particular clouds also. So in case of the atmosphere, we have only the amount of radiation reduced by this. But because of the presence of cloud, the radiation that we receive at the sensor surface has an additional component from the reflection that has originated from the clouds. So again, what basically we are trying to tell is the information or the radiation that we receive at the surface is again getting biased. So this is not only loss, but this is also addition of the signal, which is corrupting our main signal that had originated from the surface. Yes, effectively it is making the matter of sensing anything very, very difficult. Yes, we have losses also, we have gains also. So if it's only purely loss, okay, fairly simple to make out how much loss it has taken. If it's only gain, fairly make out how much gain has taken place. But now it's a combination of loss and gain. And if you see, there are 4 factors coming in, right? So here tau 1 and tau 2 for only the atmosphere, then we have tau 1 and tau 2 till the region from top of the atmosphere to the top of the cloud. Yes, so additional factors are getting added to the signal, right? Effectively, it is known that if we consider the amount of radiation or signal reaching the sensor surface as 100%, out of the 100%, 95% is only noise. 5% is only actual signal, right? If you want to know any feature, what is there on the surface from a satellite, actually what the satellite sensor receives is 95% is noise. Right? Entire technique involved is to drive out the 5% information separate from the 95% of noise, right? That's what we can easily tell as a needle in a haystack. That type of a problem. That's why the techniques are very important to do such type of a classification where we can negate out 95% and retain only the 5% of the signal, which will be actual signal that is useful to us. Is this clear?
Clear, sir. It is clear.
Okay, okay. I think that's fine. I can go to next.
Yes, sir. Next.
Yeah.
We can go to next, sir.
Right. Yes, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot, so I'll try to cover a little bit. Yes, I just try to go a little. There's just flavor of things there. Many of the things would be already known. Yes, but in this scenario, I'll just try to give you a various flavor of the things that important. Yes. So if we now, what happens is we said that the atmosphere. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Tell me, please.
It is interesting, quite interesting, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. We have time constraints, and I think many of this are known already. So I mean, just for the sake of coverage, we need to do this. Yeah. So what we have done is initially we considered a single layer of atmosphere, but actually, if you see, the atmosphere is not a single layer. The categorization of the mesosphere, stratosphere, troposphere is very broad also. In that also we can have multiple layers, right? So that's what is done here. The next one, if you see, is a distribution of the atmosphere into multiple layers. But still, if you see, they are all linear layers. Yeah, but this is in nature, it's not the case. But okay, let us understand this, what happens. So now instead of having one layer only from the surface to the sensor, now you have multiple layers. That means for each layer, there will be a tau I and epsilon I. That's what is shown here, right? Epsilon I for each layer, and each layer temperature will be Ti, different temperature. There are different temperatures, we know. So initially, when we rise into the atmosphere, temperature decreases. Then after a certain time, when you are in the the tropopause, the temperature remains a constant. Then thereafter, again it rises. Yes. Then again it decreases where you have the ozone layer, stratosphere. Yes. Above that, it continuously keeps on increasing. So the temperatures are also not constant. Now the amount of radiation that is emitted, or the wavelength of radiation emitted by an object, also depends on its existing or the surrounding temperature. Yeah, that's given by the Boltzmann, Stephen Boltzmann law, as well as the Wenz displacement, right? Sigma T to the power 4 is a constant. and lambda max t is a constant, right? So all of these things are basically going on adding noise to the signal that we are trying to retrieve. Yes. So just to give you a picture of what happens now, just take a cross section of a layer of the atmosphere. Yes, we have taken a circle here to indicate, right? You know, our things, I mean, the radiation that is going, we are considered as a cylinder. Yes, and so we have just taken a cross section of this, and these are the various molecules present, molecules of gas, dust, etc. present. Yes, with the cross section, they have their particular cross section. Let the cross section area of each of these molecules, we have taken, again, they need not be ideally circles or spheres. We have taken for the sake of simplicity. So let cross section of area be AI, right? So for each represented by index I, yes, and the cross section of each particle present AI, yes, and the number of such particles present represented by Ni, then the emittance of that particular layer will be given by epsilon I is equal to Ni AI. Yes. So AI, when you're saying cross section, that is the area exposed to the radiation, yes, which can absorb the radiation. Yes. So this is also known as the absorptional cross sectional area, AI. Right. Now this absorptional cross section area depends on two things: on the wavelength of the radiation that is being emitted, that it is receiving, as well as the type or constituent of the gases that present, right? So effectively, well, let us see what I want to conclude from here is this message, right? So for each layer now we have a emittance epsilon. It's not incomplete. That means we do not only have a sigma epsilon 1 epsilon, but from each layer there is certain emittance that is absorbed and refracted or scattered by the next layer. Then whatever originates in that, it is absorbed or scattered by the next layer. So like this, multiple layers, this goes on happening, which goes, every layer we come across, the signal comes across, adds a large amount of noise to it. Yes. So retrieving the signal, we want to basically show here how difficult it is to retrieve the actual signal from the information that we have obtained. Okay. With this background, we will go to the next segment, which is another improvement required. Now, they also talked about positional registration, right? We need to know that where the satellite is moving, right? Unless we know, unless we can attribute, the satellite doesn't know what coordinates we are given. Is the virtual coordinate in the fact that we have assigned that coordinate system. We never can go and find a equator on the sea. Yes, there is no line as equator. This is a reference system we have given. And similarly, the satellite also doesn't know over what it is flying. Right. So the next step that involves is whatever imagery the satellite has taken, we need to assign it coordinates to it, which is known to everyone there. We do it the registration. We say we register the coordinates, right? Positional registration, right? Okay. This needs to be done with respect to a reference system. On land, very easy, because we have the land markers. The GCPs are there, or ground control points there, which we need not worry about. They don't move that drastically. But in the ocean, it's really difficult. Totally difficult to have such references in the atmosphere. That is the main reason why we have a GIS for the land, but not GIS. Marine GIS is now picking up, but typically till now there was no GIS for the oceans, and till now we do not have any GIS for the atmosphere because we do not have a reference for it. So we used, in case of satellites, when they're moving on the, so we have satellites which are used for oceanography purposes, atmospheric science purposes. That's what we saw. So we need to have a reference for it, right? So that we can register them, right? So what happens in case of a ocean? You know, we take the islands as the reference points, right? So basically, if you see, this is an example of altimeter. Altimeter gives you an idea of the height of the sea surface from the bottom, right? These details we will see later, but what it basically carries is a refractometer. It's one of the, that's basically a very high efficient mirror. So on the top of the island we have stations, so which basically there, which is highly coherent extra, and then that gets reflected back, which is captured by another station on the island. Yes, so by calculating how much time it has taken, right, we can basically calculate what is the height of the satellite. Yes, plus reference. If we do a triangulation, if you have one more station with a triangulation, then we can actually calculate the direction or position of the satellite itself. Of course, nowadays we have alternate methods to do it. So GPS is there, GLONASS is there, and many other things are coming up. But then totally a thing which is moving, this is one of the ideal methods that we do in altimeters. Yes. So if you see on the right, we have a lot of this stations, okay, around the world, which basically track or provide the dimension or the registration of position to the satellites, not to the satellite imagery, but to the satellites. Okay, so they are also known as DORIS stations, or Doppler orbitography and radio positioning integrated by satellite stations. Yes, the network. Sometimes we use ships anchor in the mid ocean. Yes, so this is one of the cases when we are talking about the registration of the status. Okay. A few applications if we see for ocean remote sensing. Yes, so like in case of land, we have visible and as well as IR radiometers as well as cameras. So this IR and microwave is also used for detecting features and phenomena on the ocean surfaces. So here we see an example of the sea surface temperature from satellites. It can be detected using near infrared, yes, or infrared radiation, yes, or also microwave radiometers. Yes, and of course, when you are doing measurements close to water, in case of IR, water absorbs all the infrared. Yes, so what the return signal you will get is mostly totally black. Yes, so whereas microwave radiometers or radio, basically microwave, because comparatively long wavelength, yes, is less sensitive to atmospheric scattering. The present there, yes, so it can be used as a all-weather wavelength for measuring factors or things on the surface of the earth. So microwave applications are very, very important. Yes, so I have given a few examples here for various SST sensors or sea surface sensors, starting from the AVHRR to the Indian MSMR, multi-frequency scanning microwave radiometer, MODIS, moderate resolution imaging spectroradiometer, geostationary Earth satellites. Many of them are having this microwave radiometer. So radiometer measures the radiances, captures radiances that are reflected or emitted by the surface objects. Now come to altimetry. So as the name sounds, altimeter basically gives you an idea of the altitude of anything, right? Now we have altimeters which are airborne, in aircrafts, yes, and then we have altimeters which are spaceborne, also known as satellite altimeters, radar altimeters, satellite altimeters. Yes, and altimeters are a active sensor. They have to carry their own source, right? So you have satellite radar meters, altimeters. Sorry, they are primarily radars based on satellites, used primarily for sea surface topography measurements, right? And the interesting factor, if you see here, I will show you in the next slide, right? Just by locating or identifying the return signals, the distance from the surface is computed. Yes, that's what is given here. We will not go into the details here. And by just doing that, you can got a variety of factors about the ocean. You can not only measure the sea surface heights, you can also get an idea of the significant wave height. You can also have an idea of the wind speeds, sea surface wind speeds with this. So you see now one particular satellite with multiple applications, it's an active sensor. Excuse me, please. Yeah, we have here various examples of this type of sensors. I'll not read out each one of this, but the important application, let us see here. Yes, one of the major important applications for satellite altimetry happens in geoid determination or gravity anomaly determination. If you have to tell that yes, of oil and ocean, so how do you find out? It's not feasible. It's not feasible to go to every place in the ocean and dig and know. Yes. So what basically we do is we fly out and take a gravitational map. The gravitational anomaly map. Now when deep inside, sea surface cycle will see there is a buried density very high. Buried mass, when you say, it may refer to gas deposits, mineral deposits, or petroleum deposits, oil deposits basically, right? So if you keep on going all around taking measure the gravity anomalies here, you see this is a typical geoid map, gravity anomaly map of the total Earth surface taken from various altimeters, right? So you have this bluish colors or the magenta colors representing the anomalies negative, the red ones is the positive. So you see all these regions, Yes, you have certain things buried in that. So what it do is, in when you have to detect buried, not only in ocean, this can also be used in land. Has a little bit of application, little bit of different approach to this. Yes, so what you basically do is you take a gravity mapping of the area and you identify those places where, which gives you an idea of this buried mass. So for example, if you see this region, this is our Bombay High. Yes, the Bombay High, all of us know, we get a lot of petroleum products from there, right? You see, it's different from all other regions. Yes, and then something is buried here. You see the contours keep on changing, right from the green they go on decreasing to blue. Okay, it's not to exact scale. Yeah, so that means this has certain buried thing here, right? So that's what the remote sensing specialists basically do. They take images from altimeters, find out places where there is a chance of buried materials. Then their actual in situ observations are made. People are sent to those locations and then detect the presence of such type of resources. So satellite remote sensing is very helpful in that. So it's a very unique application of altimetry. We also have what we know as, so all of this I am discussing is microwave radiometers, and none of these signals that we get are visible to the eye. They are beyond the visible range of our eyes. So that's very important to know, right? So whatever we are discussing now is not in the visible region, which we cannot see, right? That's why we, even in the IR thing, so that's the thing we do in the, to have them in the visible region, we assign them colors, false color composites, right? So here is a case of a oblique viewing micro radiometer. In case of a altimeter, it is a nadir viewing or just directly looking down, but we also just tilt it. If you give a little bit of tilt to such type of radiometers or such type of microwave radars, you can get lot of other information. So here what you see is the use of a oblique viewing microwave radiometer, which basically is a scatterometer. A scatterometer is the one which can give you wind speed and direction on the surface, on the earth surface, and on the ocean surface primarily, and also on the earth surface. And using different techniques, you can also extract from scatterometers the roughness of the soil moisture as well. Yes, just by using a oblique wing microwave radar meter. So it's based on the principle of interference of scattering. Yes, so wherever you have unique regions present of the same type of features, you get a constructive interference. From all other reflections, you get a destructive interference. Yes, so this gives an idea of what is the presence of, what is the speed of the wind. And then using this triangulation approach, since you're looking at 3 different directions, you can also calculate what is the direction. So this is a very useful instrument, or very useful satellite sensor for detection of sea surface wind speeds and their direction. Yes, so some of the examples of scatterometers are given here. We need to remember these are all in the microwave region. Well, the very highly versatile of any of the remote sensing tools that has been designed, or equipment that has been designed, is the microwave sensing active microwave sensor of the name of synthetic aperture radar. Very unique in the sense is we do not have to have a fixed radar for this. Now every the radar for the antenna for this. Now every radar has to have an antenna. Yes, the antenna is used for reception, transmission, as well as reception. Thing is put in the space, it's very difficult to have a large antenna. Now what happens is the size of the antenna is inversely proportional to the wavelength used. So lower the wavelength, larger, I beg your pardon, the frequency used is inversely proportional to the frequency. Yes, directly proportional to the wavelength. Right. So if you are using large wavelength, you need to use a large antenna size. Right, which is the case when you are coming in terms of microwave stuff and going towards the IR case. So it's very difficult. But what happens, the synthetic aperture radar has a unique feature, because as the satellite flies, the radar cross section can be synthetically designed. Right, so you have a control on the radar area itself by just making it to fly in a particular order. Yes, so what we do is we synthesize the antenna while flying. Yes, and the very important aspect is it's all weather useful satellite sensor. Yes, and the images that you get out of here is proportional to, because what we are using here is again scattering phenomena. Yes, so what the image that we get is basically direct represents the dielectric constant variations. Yes, so though you do not get any colorful images, pictures here, it is not in the visible, but you get the variation, differences in the dielectric constant of the surface of masses. Very useful for detecting oil spills, very useful for detecting features of land and water like floods, very high application in those areas. Yes, and disaster applications, lot of disaster application, landslides, etc. We'll see a few of them. Right. So India, we have in fact a lot of such synthetic apertures radar launched. Here are the names of few. So currently operational 2BR1. Of course, till here, am I clear? Am I clear till here? Till the synthetic aperture application?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. It is okay, sir.
Yeah.
Clear, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So just a quick look into acoustic remote sensing. Now, since electromagnetic radiations cannot enter the ocean surface, so here what comes to be used is the acoustic waves. So this phenomena is again well known. This is a submarine. This is a surface floating ship, right? Now the submarine wants to hide from the ship wants to detect where the submarine is hiding. It's used in largely in strategic applications. Now the only way to view anything under the water is the use of sonar, which is the equivalent of radar. In case of the atmospheric science, it's radar. Where you're using electromagnetic radiation, where you're using sound waves, it's sonar. Yes, so if you see, this gives a clear picture of how things can be detected under the water using acoustic. So this is also remote sensing. This is also remote sensing. There is no direct contact, right? So this is also remote sensing, but acoustic remote sensing. I thought I will just give you example of this. Well, let me get you here. So this is the image which was very popular when the COVID related the lockdowns took place. Yes, so you have a picture, this one going around everywhere. You have 25th March to 20th April 2009 compared to the same period in 2020 when the lockdowns were important. And what you saw was there is a lot of decrease in the pollution level throughout the India. Yes, that's what you see. So this made into a lot of news during that time. Yes, and yeah. So what I was trying to tell you here is, so this imagery is taken from a satellite named Sentinel. I will go to it a little bit later. Right. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. Why I showed that image, we'll get to it. Okay. Yes. Now coming to certain, so far you have been discussing on the advances in instruments. Coming to some advances in the approaches or techniques. We have various techniques that have been easily used nowadays. So one is the big data tools, the data analytics, which basically has to do with processing a large volume of data and finding out the various patterns in it. Yes, so that's one of the fields. What I'll again do is, I think we are short of time, so I will just run through various of this just to introduce and give you a flavor of the techniques that are being used. Professor Manas, can you tell me how much time I have? I think we have some time for interaction also, right?
Surely, sir. We have time for interaction.
Okay.
Actually,
so another 15 minutes is okay?
Okay, fine, sir. Perfectly okay,
Yes.
sir. So 15 minutes or 20 minutes?
I'll try to finish.
We can go up to, sir, 15-20 minutes, sir. No problem. After that, we will go for short interaction, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I'll have to proceed a little faster here. A lot of things are left out, but just as I said. So neural network. Yes, so artificial neural network techniques is a very useful tool that is being now used with data processing. So far we had the traditional approaches of processing data. Right. So now we have got into this recent advances which are coming in, and a lot of improvement has been done using this processing techniques. Right. Right now we have the major application of the new techniques is in the processing of the data sets. So you see here using a neural network technique, the sound speed profiles in the oceans could be detected from satellite observations. See, initially we said that satellites cannot detect things under the ocean. Right, but then using a combination of various approaches, this is like a hybrid technique. Using satellite information, we are able to gather information on the deeper of the ocean where actually the electromagnetic radiation cannot go. So approaches like this techniques have helped us to do that. Right. Then estimation of bathymetry. Yes, again this is again based on the altimetry and gravity anomaly type of thing. Right, so bathymetry also we need not actually have to go around with a echo sounder and measure the depth of the bathymetry. around. The topography, you need not have to do that. From the space, using little bit of advanced techniques, we can detect the bathymetry here. Again, a neural network technique has been used, and I will just like to bring to your notice. Okay, if you see here, yes, various applications: exploration and drilling of offshore oil gas wells, pipelines, cables, route planning, many. Yes, and topography identification based on, again, gravity anomaly ratios. Okay, so you'll see a very interesting feature here, right? This is somewhere on the south of the Indian coast. So these are something known as sea mounts, mountains under the sea. Yes, very huge mountains under the sea. Yes, you can see the scales here. Some are as high as 2000 meters. Yes, so now this is a very dangerous things present for navigational purposes. Yes, and sonar, yes, though it works, but then when something you're moving very fast, it's very difficult to detect all this, right? So there is an approach where can we detect such type of sea mounts using satellite observations? Then entire globe. The main importance of satellite observations is we have a large spatial coverage with a high resolution and can also have a high temporal resolution. So here is what you have seen using this AN technique, right? Bathymetry has been detected, yes, and then it has to be compared with various existing phenomena and all. This has been detected in the Indian Ocean region, right? So similar such activities are carried out widely. We also know we have underwater channels in the sea, right? So generally they are not visible. Yes, but using this remote sensing as well as advanced data processing techniques, we have been able to detect that as well. Coming to atmosphere, yes, INSAT 3D has been a very popular satellite, and the INSAT series goes on, right? So we have various techniques for determination of parameters in the atmosphere as well. So one is very important that has made is the radio occultation technique. That's a very recent technique, if I say, in the total history of remote sensing, using which you can get very high resolutions of by high resolution temperature as well as humidity measurements. Yes, so there also, if you implement this neural network techniques, the resolution can be improved much higher. You see, this is a comparison of, I'm not going into the details, I'm just showing you, the capabilities of the latest techniques. You see, so the red dotted ones, your INSAT 3D, the radio occultation ones here, whatever you have in the dotted lines, black here, you see, is as good as the actual observations here. Yes, so you can easily use a remote sensing technique also for determining radio occultation type of data set. So here the satellite used is known as Cosmic, right? And then you see here the validation that has been carried. So this is basically your pressure levels. Yes, and this is what you have is your pressure derivation, right? Pressure versus temperature. So height, pressure represents your height, and then the temperatures that has been done from two techniques, the radio occultation technique and the ANN estimation technique. So these are been widely used in different factors. Okay, so far the radiances that were being measured by satellite sensors, we after doing the corrections, which was basically known as the radiative transfer equation corrections, it also needs to the remote sensing parameter, the geophysical parameter also needs to be retrieved from it. It has to be derived, because what the satellite observe is only brightness, temperature, the intensity, and the wavelength that you receive of the news. They do not give you any physical parameter. To make out meaningful physical parameter derived from you have to use various geophysical retrieval techniques. So far we used to have various approaches of determining the functions or model functions for that determination of the geophysical parameter techniques based on various approaches. Okay, actual correlation with observations. Yes, a lot of techniques were being used. But then another in that field is, again, remote sensing can also play a highly important role in geophysical parameter retrievals here itself. So if you see here is a multi-frequency scanning microwave radiometer. Just using the brightness, temperatures, we could retrieve. This is an example where the sea surface wind speed could be directly retrieved without undergoing any of the corrections, any other correction, directly from the sensor brightness, temperature itself. The sea surface wind speed could be retrieved. So a lot of other steps in between could be easily, I should say, simplified using this, right? So, and this is comparison with the neural network one derived with various other satellites. So this is a DMSP SSMI, and this is a QuickScat scatometer. This is another radiometer, and then this is a scatometer. Many of the features, if you see, are well captured. This is a qualitative comparison only. Yes, coming back to it, what I had shown. So again, this was the nitrogen dioxide concentration over France. This also came in around the lockdown times. So let me take you to the most advanced in terms of Earth observation set of satellites. They are known as the Sentinel series of satellites. Yes, and they are launched basically from the European Space Agency. Why I say they are the most advanced type of satellites is, so far what we have seen is each satellite has a very specific purpose only. Only one aspect of the Earth system it could observe, either the atmosphere or the ocean or the terrestrial, largely, okay, with little bit overlaps. But here is the satellite set of series where you have almost all types of remote sensing sensors put into the same platform, and multiple of them are operational together, right? So you have also C-band, you have the synthetic aperture, C-band is there, you have then you have the, for the land surface, you have the optical land imager, which is a good comparison with the LULC that you get from the Landsat 8 series. Yes, some are in the geostationary atmosphere, some are in the lower the orbit atmospheres. So several of this, and not only that, you also have on a altimeter based on this. Now all of them are simultaneously operational. So what happens with the Sentinel series of missions gives you for the first time the ability to observe the Earth from its all the spheres together without undergoing data correction from each other or sensor correction from each other, because the same type of the same tool, same platform gives you multiple simultaneous observation of the various Earth parameters. And this is one of the best possible satellite missions that are ever existing. Many of them are already on. Yes. So for those who are using interested in the land use applications, interesting to find is the resolution of this particular sensor is 10 meters as against the 30 meters one for the Landsat 8. Okay, and then using other techniques, you can do a fusion, and then you can reach as good as 2.5 to 2 meters resolutions on the Earth's surface. Well, the major applications which they cater to in the marine side as well as in the land side, they are all listed here. I will not go through each of them. So all of these applications simultaneously can be undertaken from this set of satellites, right? So each mission, very quickly, I will just go to feature, highlight the important features of this. So Sentinel-1 mission has a C-band SAR, yes, and it is a continuity of the Earth, the European remote sensing and NVSat satellites, yes, 12-day repeat cycle, yes, and 4 modes of synthetic aperture radar application. That almost covers all possible things you can detect on the surfaces on the Earth. Okay, not in the visible, but in the microwave region, right? And then you have interferometric work. So the resolution is excellent. The resolution that you can get is excellent using multiple types of polarizations. Sentinel-2 bands specifically consists of the visible and near infrared, and has a widely varied. If you see, the spectral range is very wide, 13 channels. Yes, excellent for all types of atmospheric remote sensing. The MSI instrument. Now MSI and OLI, they fly almost together. Sentinel-2. Yes, they are on the same platform. Yes. So if you see here, right from the aerosols, from the atmospheric constituents to snow cloud cover, as well as if you combine with this the OLI optical land imager, you get the land information simultaneously from the same information. So right from the ground to the top of the atmosphere, end of the atmosphere, one satellite is sufficient. Come to Sentinel-3. Right, I was talking about the ocean land color instruments, right? So that it is the ocean land application particularly. Yes, then you have the sea and land surface temperature or radiometer simultaneously along with the OLCI. Very good for ocean applications. Yes, then we also have a KU and C-band synthetic aperture radar, which is a bi-frequency microwave radiometer. Both the frequencies are there, so you can account for the losses in the atmosphere as well as detect the actual signal that is originated from the surface. Now the other one, you see, it was for land and atmosphere. This one, you see, it is for ocean and atmosphere together, right? Also certain aspects of the land is addressed as a visible in the visible spectrum. Some of the features from the OLCI, if you see, so this is a chlorophyll index, ocean as well as land. So you can see the global composite over 2-3 years, yes, taken from the OLCI Sentinel-3. The Sentinel-4 and 5, yes, So they are primarily, the main feature here is for atmospheric composition. Yes. And using this set series of satellites, you have an hourly update on the air quality. Every hour we have a update on the air quality right from the satellite. Has a narrow field spectrometer, which is in the UV range, the visible and near IR. So all three are there on a single satellite. Again, a very versatile satellite. Some of the application to be shown, if I was telling you, we can go to a very high resolution. So this is something using the Sentinel. You see the population numbers and density could be mapped. Yes, a typical region here. Coastal waters using a synthetic aperture radar, this Sentinel-2, as well as the applications here. So this can be widely used for detecting ships where they have anchored, yes, spills from them. So a lot of such measurements. You have the chlorophyll, which is basically the ocean biology, the turbidity presences, yes, at very, very high resolution. Of course, this I would like to highlight, again, carried out from the during the COVID-19 lockdown time, the effect of that. So how the urban borne nutrients, yes, they influence the chlorophyll presence. Okay, because of the lockdown, the nutrients reach was very less. So the chlorophyll, which are the survive on these nutrients, their growth had decreased. Yes, during the time before and after. So each region we did analyzed from the Sentinel data. Very, very, very distinguishing and very clearly observable features. So this is the capability of this particular Sentinel series of satellites, which I thought we should highlight for you. Then coming to the terrestrial typical disaster applications, this is something about the, if you say, the displacement map of any area, so which basically tracks the landslides, etc. Again, very high resolution. This work was carried out over Sikkim. Yes, again using the Sentinel-1, and then INSAR is interferometric SAR. Very clearly, within a short period of time, we can identify what are the displacements that had taken place here, and fused on a Google map. Yes, if you see this blue regions, so these are the places where actually exactly the landslides had occurred. Okay, so this is now possible. This was possible with earlier satellites, but then the resolution was poor, and then it involved a lot of in situ observations as well. Whereas now the resolution is significantly improved. Of course, yield estimates for typical species. Yes, so this again, by using 2-3 techniques ingeniously, you can in fact identify the particular species that is being cultivated anywhere in small farmlands also. And not only that, in the small farmland, you can also detect the amount of that crop that is present. The yield can be estimated of a particular species in that particular region. Of course, oil spill detections, to give you an example here, which was in August. Yes, very well captured by, again, the Sentinel series. Some of the other techniques that are still getting into the thing in case of remote sensing are image super resolution, which is very useful for your removal of clouds, as well as getting into very, very high resolution imageries. Sensor fusion, where we basically combine multiple sensor information. Say, for example, you can combine LIS3 and Landsat to reach a resolution up to 5 meters, 5 to 10 meters from 30 meters. So this type of a fusion is possible. You can combine microwave and IR to get observations about the water as well as the atmosphere simultaneously. So basically fusing multiple information from many sensors. These are certain advances that are going on right now. So not much time to cover you, but then I would like to put this to software tools that are available, since this is all of us are participating in this. These are very good tools to be used for remote sensing. So far, what has been used, and I saw that QGIS, etc., they are primarily GIS tools, but then these are purely remote sensing tools. A lot of applications can be done. One is a Sentinel application platform, that is Snap, and the other one is a basic radar altimetry toolbox. Most of the things I covered today can be actually done using these two softwares. Both of them are free to use, easily downloadable, and you can do a lot of synthetic aperture radar processing using this particular tools. So I think I have come to the end of the today's presentation. hope it was helpful to all, and I'd like to make a few acknowledgements. So thank you so much, the Atal FDP organizers, for inviting me, the officials of Shiksha Anusandhan University, and collaborators, my various collaborators, my parent institute, and extremely grateful to all the participants for having given a very patient listening. and I will feel this talk to be a great success if some of the work can be utilized by any of the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I have raised my end, so yes, I have raised my end of the talk. Anything to be, if you
Now
want
the
to ask, discuss, or yes, sir. Yes.
Sir, interaction session. Participants, any question if you like, you can ask. Actually, this is a golden opportunity to know a lot of things from sir. So after listening to such a beautiful, excellent presentation, definitely must have got an idea about a lot of things. And I hope you can learn a lot from it. Wonderful session, in fact. So please ask question. Any
Thank you.
questions, sir will answer. You can ask through chat.
I will try to answer. I'll try to answer.
Sure, sure.
I am also learning. I'm also learning.
Participants, please ask question either through chat or directly. You can switch on your microphone and you can ask. If through chat, it is better always. There will be no disturbance.
Okay, I see a few questions. Yeah, yeah.
Sir.
Tell me, tell me.
No, sir, if you can see the chart, you can answer directly, sir. No problem.
Yes. I see two questions now. One is by Miss Dr. Samita Garg, I believe, and it's the chat is. I mean, the question is this: which remote sensing data should be procured from which department to calculate total urban population in any city, and at what cost? Right. Okay. So yeah, this has several answers to it. So if you're looking at only urban population, right? So are you looking on only in terms of the remote sensing data set or actual census? Because calculation of urban population, that may be difficult using remote sensing. You can identify urban populations, but calculation of the population is not possible directly through remote sensing.
Second question, sir.
Okay. Are there any remote sensing technique for predicting groundwater quality? How to assess water quality data? Okay, there is no per se access directly, or groundwater quality cannot be accessed. Yes, because for the same reason as we said, electromagnetic radiation cannot penetrate into the deeper ocean. But then using a hybrid technique, yes, where we can use certain satellite factors, satellite parameters, as well as the groundwater quality factors, which can be reflected on the surface, we can derive statistical relations in this case. Directly, it's not possible. And water quality data, yes, we have the groundwater boards. Then that provides a lot of data. We have the pollution control board, central CPW. Sorry, not CPWD. I'm sorry. Pollution board. Basically, the state pollution boards are there. So
SPCB.
that also, SPCB, yes, SPCB. So through them also it's possible to get, but of course I think some of the data has to be purchased. Then I have okay, what is the lifetime of a satellite? Okay, lifetime of a satellite can range from few months to several years. So for example, you have the let me take you to Chandrayaan 1. Chandrayaan 1 had a typical satellite orbiting around, right now also it is only. So Chandrayaan 1, not 2. It was designed for a mission life of 6 years. It has already crossed close to 10 plus years. Yes, so usually a satellite is designed. So most of the Landsat series of satellites were designed up to 6 years. Right. So the life of a satellite primarily depends on the onboard fuel it is carrying to prevent it from deorbiting or have a correction of the orbits, plus the functioning of the sensors. Now, any satellite is launched with triple redundancy. Basically, triple redundancy means there are three of the type of, the three of the same instruments present. So if one fails, other can work second one fails, third one can work. The major ones. If all the three fail, then the satellites has to be discarded. So there is no fixed lifetime for a satellite, but then it can function anywhere from about 3 years to 20 years plus, giving you a statistics of the existing satellites. Dr. Swami has asked, what is the highest resolution of images we are getting at present? I am asking with reference to pavement management associated with highways. Okay, if you see, go for quick, like the whatever was existing, the quick bird diagnosis, it was 1 meter, right? But then now it is categorized under the security regime or the strategics of those 1 meter resolution you may not be getting, or less than one. Actually, we are getting less than 1 meter resolution imageries, but that is not available to everyone. But for particularly when I'm asking about pavement, as I suggested, say for example here Sentinel, we have a resolution of spatial resolution of 10 meters, and then using little bit of sensor fusion into it, you can go to as low as 2 meters. I think it is answered. What is Dr. Santosh Kumar? What is the cost of 1 meter resolution, sir? See, this I will not be able to give a direct answer, because it depends on which satellite data you basically want, and what is the source, right? And then of course what type of a processed level you want, whether you want level 1 data or level 3 data. So the variation, I mean the charges are different for each. And of course, if you had the image also, you need to see the area extent is also, if very large, then also it's going to be very costly. Yes, of course, I can suggest is probably you can, for the Indian satellites, you can log into Bhuvan website of NRSC, National Remote Sensing Center. They have a list of various satellite data sets with the tentative estimates. I think you need to register there and then write to them. They will let you know what all scenes you need. If you give a total declaration on that, they will tell you the approximate cost for that. Yes, yes.
Any other question, dear participants? Sir, another question that
yes,
Dr. Swami has asked.
How to overcome the problem associated with cover like trees over highways? Okay. See, this is one thing. What the satellites basically measure is the canopy height. Yes, so what happens below it is very difficult to have a look at. But yes, then what we have models to look below the canopy heights. These are energy balance models. Energy balance models in congregation with satellite tools, it can really give you the existence of a tree, what is the influence, and if the tree or canopies do not exist, then what happens. So here the modeling and simulation plays a very important role. The other way is you use multiple satellites together. For example, one satellite which is sensitive to vegetation, operating in a wavelength which is sensitive to vegetation, another satellite which is not sensitive to vegetation, operating in a wavelength which is not sensitive to vegetation. Now, discerning both of them, you can negate out the effect of any tree cover. Yes, of course, these are very approximate values. Nothing better than actual observations and model simulations. That's where your basically this data analytics as well as this image super resolution things come into picture, where things can be selectively masked. Thank you.
Sir, thank you so much, sir, for an excellent session. Actually, not only participants, I also learned a lot of things. Thank you so much, sir, for giving so much time, and we look forward for more sessions from you. May not be in this DP, maybe for in other platform. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Now,
thank you very much. Thanks to all the participants. I am also benefiting, and yes, let us all learn together. Thank you.
And participants, if you will have any questions to ask, sir, and you can ask through the WhatsApp group. we have made it. Sir is there in the WhatsApp group, and
Yes,
he will
sure.
answer the questions.
Sure,
Thank you so
sure.
much, sir. Now this is the end of the session, and we will meet again at 2:30 p.m., sir. That is the hands-on session, and please join 2 minutes earlier. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks all. Thank you.